You had mentioned the prayer, quote unquote, reforms. What are we talking about? What was that all about?
This is in Rabbeinu Avraham may not have invented them. He may not have started these reforms, but he was part of this pietistic Beit Midrash. We know that his father-in-law was a prominent member of this, who was a student of the Rambam and a dayan on his Bet Din, Rabbeinu Hananel ben Shmuel, a prominent figure in the Gniza world and Fostat of the Rambam's times. Rabbeinu Avram's father-in-law was the head of this Beit Midrash. So we know there were others who contributed to this Beit Midrash, but this Beit Midrash practiced certain practices which they felt were biblically mandated, such as, if you study the Chumash, you'll see that whenever someone is giving thanks to Hashem, he prostrates himself. Avraham Avinu gets good news from Hashem, he bows down and prostrates himself in thanks to Hashem. So Rabbeinu Avraham says this is the original biblical form of worship. We know that in the Beit HaMikdash, that was part of the Yom Kippur service, which we still practice as a zecher for the original service in the Beit HaMikdash on Yom Kippur. So he says if that was the original form of worship, why shouldn't we do it? If raising out hands outstretched to Hashem was a form of worship, like it's Vayisa Kapav El Hashem, so we should do the same. So in this Beit Midrash, they would practice Shtachavaya, they would practice raising their hands out to Hashem. He also deduces from Gemarot that it's not proper to sit in any posture in the Bet Knesset unless you're facing the Aron HaKodesh. So he instituted that instead of sitting around the perimeter of the Beit Midrash, which is the way Middle Eastern communities in some cases still do today. You go to Israel, you'll find certain old shuls that are still set up that way. But he instituted that everyone would sit in rows, not on chairs, of course, in the Middle East of his time. They were sitting on the floor, but they were sitting in rows facing the front of the synagogue. These were also common in by their Muslim counterparts. So it seems that the opposition was politically motivated, but the political motivation hid under the guise of religious motivation, and they complained that this nugget, and the complaint was brought by members of the family that had originally opposed the Rambam's leadership. Members of that family, which was a powerful and wealthy family, this family brought a complaint to the Sultan that Rabbeinu Avraham is instituting reforms to Judaism. You can't have a leader of the Jewish community that's instituting reforms that are counter to the Jewish religion. So he has to be deposed, and you've got to put in a new leader, and we know just the man for the job. This is the complaint they brought to the Sultan. So Rabbeinu Avraham composed a defense in Arabic for the Sultan of himself, and he said he's not instituting any reforms. He's practicing original Jewish practices, and furthermore, he's only doing that in his own personal Beit Midrash. Now, on the halachic aspects of this opposition, that's where he addresses in the Sefer HaMaspik, where he talks about in detail about when we could imitate farm customs, when we cannot, what is proper, what's not, and a very long exposition of all the point-by-point refutations of those who had opposed these quote-unquote reforms. All of them in Rabbeinu Avram's mind date back to the Chumash, date back to the Gemara. They're all old, viable Jewish practices which had fallen out of use because of the long exile. That's how he puts it. And in his mind, he was doing the right thing by bringing back. And again, he was not forcing them on anybody, but this Beit Midrash was practicing these practices.
We're not talking about any textual changes. There's no textual in the text at all.
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
There are places where Rabbeinu Avram discusses Girsaot, but again, not as an innovator, but just reflecting what he believes is the proper Girsa and Tefillah. And there's almost every case that I have checked, there is Gniza evidence for the Girsaot that he mentions.